Welcome to the Functional Medicine Radio Show with your host, Dr. Carri Drzyzga, known internationally as the Functional Medicine Doc. Dr. Carri is committed to helping patients find the root cause of their health problems and fixing the cause with natural treatments so they can feel normal again. Dr. Carri is the founder of Functional Medicine Ontario and is the author of the hit book, Reclaim Your Energy and Feel Normal Again. Please welcome your host, Dr. Carri Drzyzga.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Functional Medicine Radio Show, the only internet radio show dedicated to giving you real solutions to improve your health. Not only are they real solutions, but they're natural solutions as well, because as you know, the one and only true wealth you have is your health. I'm your host, Dr. Carri Drzyzga, the Functional Medicine Doc, and I'm committed to helping you find the root cause of your health problem, fix the cause with natural treatment so you can feel normal again and live your life to the fullest. Just a quick bit of housekeeping before I introduce our special guest. I'm happy to announce that I'm working on my next book. The title is Reclaim Your Digestive Health and Feel Normal Again, Fixing the Root Cause of Your GI Distress with Natural Treatments. This book should be ready later this year, so keep an eye out for it. Okay, that's it for our housekeeping, so let's get started. I'm very excited about today's show because my special guest is Patrick Harrison. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Patrick is founder and CEO of CoreChair. His degree in kinesiology and his passion and strong vision for healthy seating solutions led him to develop the CoreChair, which is an active sitting solution that was inspired by the growing number of individuals who have intuitively exchanged their office chair for an exercise ball, as well as the alarming evidence-based research on the health impacts of sedentary sitting. Now, the media has tuned into this scientific evidence and has attracted the public's attention with articles with titles such as Sitting Disease, The Perils of Sitting, and Sitting is the New Smoking. Patrick, thank you so much for being my special guest today on this episode of the Functional Medicine Radio Show.
My pleasure, Dr. Carri. Thank you for having me.
So first off, let's kind of talk about what does that mean, sitting disease? Can you explain to our listeners what that is?
Well, the media would reflect on the research that's been done quite extensively, both in North America, Europe, and in Australia. And it speaks more to what happens to our body when we don't move. When I talk about sitting disease, I like to add to that the musculoskeletal issues that are associated with not moving. So my whole definition of it is about how we incorporate movement. Sitting disease speaks more specifically to how much we are inactive throughout our day. So it's not just sitting in the office chair and not moving and sitting in a bad position, but also the fact that we get up in the morning, we sit down and have breakfast, we sit in our commute to the office, we sit at the office, we come home and sit for dinner, and then we sit for our leisure afterwards. So we really only spend 3 out of our 24 hours being active.
Amazing. And so the research is really staggering on how bad it is, our sedentary lifestyle, and yet technology is making it, I don't know, worse, the sedentary lifestyle in a way.
It totally is. It's we have mass transportation, airplanes, buses, trains, cars that move us all over the globe, and yet we don't move. So not only that, but we don't even have to leave our technology to get a coffee, to get our meal, and we're often just totally mesmerized by our technology, and we don't need to move. We can watch movies on our phone, and our technology is a blessing, but it's also a curse.
Now, the other thing is that there are millions of people struggling with back pain and back issues. So I know a lot of people are looking for ergonomic chairs, ergonomic desks. So how does active sitting help with back issues?
So I totally agree. Like 80% of our population has had at least one significant back issue in their lifetime. And currently, and you would know this quite directly, that almost 30% of our population are currently seeking some form of therapeutic intervention. It costs our economic system something in the vicinity of $90 billion a year, both in direct and indirect costs. That's absenteeism, presenteeism, as well as therapeutic attention. Probably the biggest challenge that we've got these days is that we're transitioning from a doctrine that we've had for so long. The traditional office chair was designed almost 150 years ago. It was designed with a flat seat and a tall back and armrests. And although the technology has changed, the aesthetics have changed, the quality has changed, the basic design has not changed. So the problem is that when we sit at a 90-degree sitting position, which is kind of the traditional position that ergonomists are moving away from, but still kind of adhere to a certain extent. When we sit at 90 degrees, our legs come up 60 degrees and our pelvis tilts back 30, and it creates a long C curve in our spine. It flattens our lower back in particular, and it creates a lot of intervertebral issues, which lead to back problems.
Okay, so can you explain how the CoreChair is different from a standard office chair? And also talk about what is active sitting.
Sure. So probably I'll step back a little bit. My previous world was designing seating for people in wheelchairs. So this was a population when they got up in the morning, they sat all day long until they went to bed at night. So I became intimately aware of the need for them in terms of good postural positioning. The difference between a good active sitting chair is that it should and would address both the postural positioning, so that we're addressing the pelvis much like our foundation. Like when we stand, we address the feet. When we sit, we should address the pelvis. This chair embraces your pelvis, so prevents that slumping in your pelvis, so it promotes more extension in your spine. The whole idea of keeping your spine more extended and balanced as it ascends towards your head and neck is that it balances your intervertebral joints and reduces the potential of soft tissue creep and instability of the joints. The idea of introducing activity into that is that we can mobilize those joints, we can stimulate the blood flow, especially to the low back where there really isn't a good supply of blood flow, and we can stimulate the nerves so that we can actually keep the muscles more activated.
So active sitting means that the chair moves around somehow? Like, what does that mean exactly?
Yes, so as you alluded to earlier, the inspiration for the design of this chair was that people were taking the ball to the office. They knew intuitively that they needed movement in their life, and they were taking the ball. The problem with the ball is it doesn't provide any postural support. So the idea with this chair, different from a ball, the pivot point is somewhere down in the floor, so it's very low down, so it's more of a sway. With the CoreChair, it articulates immediately beneath the user's center of balance, so it really mobilizes the joints of the hips, the pelvis, and the spine.
And the CoreChair looks like an office chair. It's not a big ball. It's not a big bulky anything.
No, it's actually it's a low back and it's a sculpted seat, so it looks very different than an office chair, but at the same time very similar. And that's probably the greatest need right now. So that's where we've been kind of focusing, getting the word out, is to those that are chained to a desk for 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 hours a day.
Okay, so can you tell us about active sitting and productivity? Because I would think if you're having better posture and you're able to move around, and that's going to you said increase blood flow to your back, I would think that would also increase blood flow all through your body and into your brain as well, and with just having less sick days because of pain, back pain in particular, in general we would just be more productive.
Yeah, in fact, we're embarking on a study right now with the University of Guelph with Dr. Leah Bent, and what we're going to be doing is using Doppler ultrasound to measure carotid blood flow so that we can identify how much blood flow is actually going to the brain when we're sitting active. And yes, there is research that shows with movement and activity that there is an enhanced blood flow to the brain, and in particular it's going to deliver the oxygen and the glucose and the other nutrients that are necessary to optimize cognitive function. So we're going to be looking at correlating that to it, but our hypothesis is that we should see an effect on that, not just in the passive active sitting, but also when we're engaging in 30 and 60-second intermittent exercise routines that we currently have on our website.
Okay, so I want to kind of switch gears because we've been talking about your CoreChair, and I know a lot of listeners out there, they have so-called desk jobs, and they're looking into using stand-up desks or these treadmill desks or these desks that you can stand up or sit down. There's all kinds of options now out there for ergonomics. So can you comment on some of that stuff?
Absolutely. With the advent of the media headlines on sitting disease, the kind of natural knee-jerk reaction was to go to standing. So if sitting's bad, standing must be better. So the problem is that there was no evidence leading into that. It was just a solution that everybody migrated to. So now there's research coming out that shows that it doesn't matter whether you sit or you stand, you need to move. So my recommendation is that if possible, that you can have a workspace that includes both a standing opportunity as well as a sitting opportunity. And there's a plethora of different options on sit-stand desks, portable desktop ones, as well as a whole desk that will raise and lower. So I encourage that. But when you are standing, it's really preferable that you have something that you can stand on that encourages movement, like a wobble board.
Ah, okay. Yeah, and not just a flat floor. Because if you're standing on a flat floor, you're not moving.
Yeah, and we had all kinds of research done back in the 50s that looked more at an industrial application, and they were specifically looking at what are the problems with just standing. So now we're in a situation where more people are standing in the office, and we're not only hearing anecdotal feedback from individuals about how they have back pain, and they have swollen ankles. I forget what the term was for the swollen ankles. It was a pretty cool one that just escaped me. But we need to look at how we address that issue. Also, the research that's coming out right now is showing that if you have a pre-existing back problem and you break that up with sitting opportunities, that the return to the discomfort or the pain from standing comes back quite rapidly. So it doesn't totally go away with a short break.
Yeah, and it would seem to me, too, that if you're sitting in the CoreChair and you have more movement going through your body, or if you're standing at a desk and you're on a wobble board, that there's a lot more neurological input going to your brain. And for your long-term brain health, that is a good thing.
Absolutely.
That's like more exercise for your brain on a literal level.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how can our listeners ensure that their office is a healthy one, whether they're in a corporate situation or a private home office? What are some of the tips and suggestions that you have for them?
Well, I think probably the biggest challenge that most people have in an office job is that when they get the job, it comes with a desk and a chair. And they start sitting down early in their career or whenever they start that job, and they don't know that there's other options available to them. As I mentioned before, there's all kinds of traditional office chair designs. Some of them obviously look way better than others, and some of them have a real kind of pizzazz, iconic look to them. But at the end of the day, they all result in the same thing, and they really restrict movement. I think it's beholding to the office worker, especially if they're experiencing symptoms of back pain, which is kind of the most obvious one that people notice. Nobody notices how slow that their physiology is being affected. But if they start to notice that they're having issues, to really get out and research and identify things that they can do and become advocates for themselves within their workspace. I think there isn't a lot of options out there, but a lot of companies that we've been speaking to, they make decisions on what they purchase because they want uniformity of all their products, and they're overlooking the fact that all of their employees are individuals.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you can provide our listeners with 3 tips to be healthier at work today, what would they be?
Well, I'm going to give you 5.
Oh, 5. Awesome. I like that, Patrick.
So I think probably the most important thing for all of us is that we need to get a really good sleep. And it doesn't have to be long. It just needs to be good quality sleep. And I think the other thing is that we need to have a healthy diet, which I know you speak to on a regular basis. That we need to make sure that we hydrate. Too many times we go to the coffee pot when we're feeling dragged out, where we should really go to the fountain. And we need to incorporate regular, good exercise in our days so that we're not just going to the gym, but we're actually being shown how to do it properly, so that we're not injuring ourselves and we're getting more out of that workout. And we need to introduce more incidental movement into our day. And it's kind of an interesting phenomena because the Mayo Clinic has been speaking to this whole issue of NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And what they're suggesting is that if you incorporate just even a little bit of extra activity routinely and consistently throughout your day, that you're going to burn more calories, you're going to keep your whole nervous system stimulated, your circulation stimulated, and at the end you're going to have a much better complement to your time at the gym.
Can you talk a little bit more about that incidental movement? Because that's the first time I've heard that word, incidental movement, or that phrase, I should say.
Well, I'm not actually certain, but I think I might have invented it.
Oh, all right. Well, we're talking to the inventor there, listeners.
But I think it's really a question of when we don't move, if we're on the couch or we're sitting at the dinner table or we're slouching down in our office chair, we're not moving at all. If you picture you're driving down the road and you're doing the speed limit, and let's call that your metabolic rate, that's what basically keeps your body functioning. If we decide to increase our speed by 5%, it's not a lot, it takes us a little bit over the speed limit, we're going to burn more fuel. If we just do that in our whole day, if we can just incorporate a little bit of movement consistently throughout our day, we just start to put a little bit more demand on our metabolic system. So we're going to be burning calories and we're going to be stimulating our whole system.
Okay, that makes total sense. Okay, Patrick, so here's kind of a dumb question for you. Is there anybody that is not a good candidate for the CoreChair?
Well, I tend to limit recommendations to people who have a really serious spinal issue. And probably the category that would fit that best are people who have already undergone a surgical intervention, so they've had fusion, as an example. If they've been fused in their low back such that we're not able to promote that extra extension in their spine, then it has a limited value. I think we've only been on the market for a year, but we've had so much different feedback from people who've had chronic back pain and haven't found any other solutions that just scream our praise for the product. So it's really about somebody who wants to be engaged in their sitting position and get some movement and incorporate into it. But for the most part, I think it's a limited population that wouldn't benefit from it. So a lot of people say, well, what's your target market? And I don't know, who sits out there?
A lot of people sit. But yeah, as you explain that with people that have had serious back problems and that have gone through surgery and their spine has been altered in some way, that I can see how that might limit their ability for their body to get the full benefits from the CoreChair. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
It's a sculpted seat in the low back, so it really is designed to kind of wrap around your pelvis. So if your pelvis doesn't have that mobility in it, then for sure it's going to diminish the value.
So Patrick, is there anything else about the CoreChair that you think is important for our listeners to know about?
Well, there is a couple things. I think probably the biggest thing is, as I mentioned with the stand-up desk, they kind of came out as a reaction to the headlines, the sitting disease, and everybody kind of gravitated towards that. When I set out to design the CoreChair, I didn't want to just make a gimmicky product. I really wanted to make sure that this product was effective. So I would say that this is probably one of the most evidence-based designs with respect to anticipated outcome. We worked extensively with the University of Waterloo and Dr. Jack Callahan. We've done work with Dr. Alan Hedge at Cornell University, with Dr. James Levine out of the Mayo Clinic, and as I mentioned, the Guelph University, but we're also starting on a project with Dr. Diana De Carvello out of Memorial University, who's going to be looking at back pain and CoreChair as an intervention to that. So I really believe in the science. I don't want to tell people features and benefits. I want them to be confident that this is something that's going to be of value to them. I think the other thing that's important is somewhere through the design process, we had to decide whether we were going to go with a low-end commodity chair or a high-end quality lifetime chair. So we went with the latter, and so it's a high-quality product. It is expensive. It's a $1,200 retail. But for somebody who sits 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 12-year expectancy of the chair as a minimum, it really only costs 40 cents a day. And so a lot of people have no real perception of the value of a chair. They think about a $99 kind of Staples chair. So I guess what I'm saying is it's an evidence-based design that we've put forth as a high value for the end user who cares about their health and have back issues.
So 40 cents a day, and as you said, Patrick, it's an investment, but for those that are out there working, as I am, I'm a solo entrepreneur. I run my own office. I'm in private practice. So I'm the chief cook and bottle washer.
Right.
So if I'm not in my office seeing patients, I don't have an income. So if I hurt my back, I could easily lose $1,200. Very easily, very fast, with just, one missed day of work.
Right.
So I can definitely see that as a good investment. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because I was looking over all the information you sent me. I think it's a 12-year guarantee?
Yeah, it's a 12-year warranty. So we literally beat the heck out of this chair in the development process. So because we want people to move in it. So we had to make sure that the chair was going to be durable enough to be like a really high-end gym equipment. So we expect this chair to be used at least 8 hours a day, and we have it in 911 call centers right now. So these are basically 24/7 applications. So the chair's, it's designed to last.
Fantastic. So you had mentioned earlier that you've been getting a lot of great stories about people who have purchased your chair, have been using the CoreChair, and how it's changed their lives. Can you tell us one story that really sticks out for you?
Well, there's a whole bunch, so I'll pick one, and it's one that we've just been talking with just recently. There's a lady by the name of Belinda Trussell who's represents our country in the Olympics for dressage horse riding. And if you're familiar with the sport of dressage riding, it's where they make the horse look like it's doing all the work, and the rider is stoic and rarely moves. And as you can imagine, when you're holding your body in such a position for that length of time with the impacts that are going on, as fluid as the horse might be, there's a lot of discomfort that comes from that, a lot of tightness and things like that. So when Belinda's off the horse, she is sitting in a chair in the arena coaching. So we were able to get a CoreChair under Belinda, and now she is suggesting to us that this made a huge difference in her general comfort, and feels that it's really adding to her ability to ride. And we're kind of rooting for her. She'll be, I believe, she'll be representing us in Rio this year. So that's one of many feedback that we get, and most of the time it's unsolicited. People just calling us back saying, "I love this chair."
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that's wonderful. Patrick, how can our listeners find out more about you, and where can they find your CoreChair?
Sure. Our website is CoreChair.com, and we're available in Canada, the United States currently. We do sell internationally, but we're mainly focusing on getting it into that marketplace. And you're welcome to reach out at info@CoreChair if you have any questions. And we have an e-commerce store online. We're also available through Staples and Amazon and soon to be Costco, as well as a number of specialty dealers like Fitter One in Calgary and FitNef, and a number of other dealer outlets like that.
Oh, that's fantastic. So listeners, I'll make sure that I have those links in the podcast notes so that you can easily find out about Patrick and about the CoreChair. Patrick, thank you so much for being my special guest today. This has been a great interview.
Thank you, Dr. Carri. It's been a pleasure.
All right, that wraps up this very special episode of the Functional Medicine Radio Show with Patrick Harrison. And I want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. And I'd like to invite you back next week for another episode of the Functional Medicine Radio Show. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Carri Drzyzga, the Functional Medicine Doc. Have a great week, everyone.
You've been listening to the Functional Medicine Radio Show with your host, Dr. Carri Drzyzga, known internationally as the Functional Medicine Doc. Dr. Carri is committed to helping patients find the root cause of their health problems and fixing the cause with natural treatments so they can feel normal again. Dr. Carri is the founder of Functional Medicine Ontario and is the author of the hit book, Reclaim Your Energy and Feel Normal Again. Please tell your friends about the Functional Medicine Radio Show, and we'll see you next week with more from Dr. Carri.